no one can time the market, because if everyone could time the market, everyone would be really wealthy.
What does
What I
that mean
tell
when you
them,
say time the market?
well, history will show you that real estate has been a good investment for people and typically will go up over time. So if time is on your side, it's a great investment. But if you're in it to buy low, sell high in a year, well, unless you're adding square footage, rehabbing a property, and doing things that would create that property to become worth more in a short period of time, unless you're doing something like that, real estate is pretty tough investment in the short term unless you're doing other things to increase the value. I recommend any new agent out there build relationships, be genuine, kind, and honest, and know your stuff. And if you don't know something, tell them you don't know, and you'll get the answer instead of trying to deceive someone or pretend you know something when you don't.
All right, Scott, thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it.
So you came from a family with sort of like a real estate and lending background, and you're like a second generation realtor. What was it like growing up around the business? And when did you know you'd follow the path?
You know, gosh, I was a little kid and my dad owned a real estate company and my mom helped him. So as a kid, I wasn't paying much attention. I do remember a lot of chaos, a lot of fun in my childhood. So that was good. Um, and then as I got older and started to understand, more about what my parents were doing, I understood that, there's up and down markets. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. And the trials and tribulations of actually being a real estate agent, owning your own brokerage and dealing with different markets. This was way back in the 80s. Didn't think much of it through high school and my youth, but when I went to college, and I graduated, it kind of seemed natural to me. It seemed like what I understood more than anything else. So maybe I had a little advantage because behind the scenes, I got to see what was going on. And I guess subconsciously just got a grip of the real estate world at that point in time. And it was more of a natural transition, so to speak.
Was it more like growing up, like that's your thing, or it just becomes like naturally from families and growing up?
I think it's just sort of your upbringing, maybe someone whose father is a construction worker. It's what they know, so they just naturally end up in that field or lead towards that field, or someone whose parents are a doctor, maybe they, lean towards the medical industry. Not in all cases, but that's sort of how it was for me. It just seemed like I was always around it. So it just kind of pulled me in that direction. And the closer I got, the more I enjoyed being a part of it, really helping the people. And it is a very rewarding career. It can be demanding and difficult at times, but at the end of the day, it is rewarding. And it just kind of kept pulling me in that direction. I was open-minded to everything as I was going through school and learning. But I kept coming back to that. And I'm glad I did, actually.
So you studied in economics in San Jose, and how has that academic foundation shaped the way you kind of advise clients nowadays? And what is often the biggest financial decisions of their lives?
So, yes, purchasing real estate is, if not the biggest financial decision someone can make in their lives. It is one of the, if not the biggest financial decision. And I think my background and my degree in economics is also what kind of steered me towards real estate because, you learn about different things that affect the market, equities, oil, interest rates, supply and demand, which affects housing. When there's a large supply, house values come down. When there's a short supply, house values go up. And I always found it intriguing the different things that can affect the different markets, and in particularly the real estate market. Um, Growing up as a kid, seeing that, wow, my parents bought a house for 45,000, and now, it's gone up over 20, 25 times. And that was always interesting and compelling to me. And that's also how people create wealth through real estate and home ownership. And it's been neat to kind of combine the two, my education with my career. I feel like it gave me a pretty good understanding as to why certain things are happening and what can impact them. Again, no one can predict the future, but it is at least interesting to know why certain things are happening.
So maybe during the process, whether or not your client is selling or buying, you can give them a different perspective, possibly.
Yeah, when it comes to interest rates, a lot of people are hung up on interest rates. And then is if I is and trying to time the market. They always try and time the market. And I always tell them no one can time the market. Because if everyone could time the market, everyone would be really wealthy.
What
So
does
what
that
I
mean
tell
when you
them,
say time the market?
well, a lot of people think when it comes to real, like when they buy stocks, they want to buy low and sell high.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a much more fluid market than real estate. Real estate's more of a long haul situation. And a lot of people say, well, I'll wait a year or two, and maybe the market will come down. And then they found themselves in a position where they can't even buy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the real estate market seems to be going up more than it does go down. I won't say there are corrections, but corrections seem to happen pretty, when there's a downturn, it seems to happen really quick, caused by an economic event. Kind of like the crash in 08, 09. Some areas saw a 50% decrease. Well, several years later, houses are 2 to 3 times what they were at the bottom of that crash. So they collapsed in a period of 1 to 2 months, but in a period of 10 to 12 years, they've doubled and tripled in value. So I always tell my clients, where are you now? What are your goals? And if your goals are long term, generally speaking, as history would show us, real estate is a great investment. If you're in it for the short term to make a quick buck, the road can be very curvy, very bumpy. So from 1 to 2 years, we're not quite sure. It could go up, it could come down. But if you're looking in the long term, the graphs will show you, history will show you that real estate has been a good investment for people, and typically will go up over time. So if time is on your side, it's a great investment. But if you're in it to buy low, sell high in a year, well, unless you're adding square footage, rehabbing a property, and doing things that would create that property to become worth more in a short period of time, unless you're doing something like that, real estate is pretty tough investment in the short term unless you're doing other things to increase the value. But for a family, long-term wealth, real estate can be a great investment. Plus, you get tax write-offs that are involved in that as well.
Mm-hmm. So before launching the Monarch Pacific Realty, though, I saw you were a senior loan officer and did hold positions in a big real estate firm. How did working on those lending side change kind of how you operate nowadays as a broker?
I feel a lot of people that own real estate brokerages like myself or our real estate agents don't have the opportunity to see the other side. Now, as realtors, we're working with lenders all the time. If we're representing a buyer, our buyer is usually getting pre-approved with a lender. So there has to be a lot of direct communication with the lender. Since I've been on that side, I feel like I can relate to the lenders and understand where they're coming from. They do get a lot of pressure because loans take time, and agents and sellers want things to happen fast, and sometimes it's beyond the lender's control. So I can empathize with them a little bit. I know where they're coming from. And then if things are going sour or south and not looking right, through the experience I've had, I can get on it a little ahead of time and start asking the right questions, which can maybe nip a situation in the butt, so to speak. Get ahead of it versus just depending on having faith in someone. So it was really nice understanding that side of the business as well. I think it has helped me greatly. When I graduated college, I helped someone build a house from the ground up. We tore a house down and we built a house. It was my girlfriend at the time, her brother, and her father. Her father was the engineer. The brother was a contractor, and us three, aside from like drywall and roof, we did everything. And it was neat seeing that side of it too. So I think the more an agent can get involved and understand other aspects of the industry as a whole, I think it can benefit them and their clients greatly, because they'd just be more educated and have more information for them when certain questions might arise.
Wow, that's impressive.
And I know you're a builder too, so it's very nice to meet you. And I like the collaboration and being able to share the stories and understand what we each do. I think it'll help both of us greatly in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, that's nail on the head, right? For me, it was one of those things where I have experience in construction, renovation, all that things, but I had bare to minimum knowledge on real estate at all, and that's one of the main reasons I approach you on it as well. And so, on starting the kind of the brokerage side of things, what would you say kind of the moment or the catalyst that actually made you to make that decision, going from building that first building that you did, to home lending, to real estate agent, and then finally right now as a broker? Is there more like a catalyst, a moment, or like that was that
There kind of was. You know, as I graduated college with an economics degree, money was interesting to me. So being a loan officer and helping people with their finances and getting loans, and the lending world is great. I mean, the interest rates come down, someone's equity goes up. A client comes to me and says, "Oh, geez, I got to put two kids through college." And I say, "Well, look, your interest rate is," and this is back then in the early 90s, the rates are 9, and we're not, your interest rate on your loan is 9.5. Well, the rates today are 5. You only owe 300,000. Your house is now worth 950. How much is college going to cost? And they say, "Well, probably a couple 100,000 for two kids." Okay, well, let's take your $300,000 loan. We'll bring it to 500,000. So you're going to borrow 200,000. We're going to lower your rate to 5%. And your payment's going to be very similar to what it was before we did the refinance. And you're going to have the money to put your children through college, and you still have $300,000 to $500,000 in equity. That's just one example of, the power of how people can leverage their property to accomplish big things in life, to propel their families forward. So originally, that's why I ended up in the loan industry, coming from economics. But back then, To be a loan officer, you had to have your real estate license. So you had to have your real estate license to do loans unless you worked for one of the big banks like a B of A or Wells Fargo. You were just an employee of the bank and they were under different regulations. So I already had the license. I already did the studying to get the license. So as I was doing loans, I was helping people acquire the financing to buy their, I was younger. Some of my friends were starting families and buying homes. And I was like, my family did real estate. I understand it a little bit. And I had a mentor that helped me a little bit. And I said, well, maybe I should try and help them purchase the homes as well. So I dabbled in it a little bit. And then in 2007, 8, when the financial crisis happened, there were no loans happening. There was a period of time where the lending industry just shut off. And that's why we had that housing market collapse. So I found myself in a situation of doing pretty good for myself to like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And I had to reinvent myself. So there were a lot of foreclosures and distressed sales happening. And I had a couple clients that were investors that wanted to start, buying these homes and fixing them up and making a profit. So I went to a 7-day seminar in Arizona. A lot of agents at that time were working with banks and helping them sell the huge inventory of foreclosures. I worked with the investors because the banks would do sometimes they'd just sell them at the county steps or do a short sale. So I did a little training. I told a couple of my clients, yes, we can do this. And we've jumped in and started basically flipping houses. So I went from doing loans to flipping houses pretty quick. And I fell in love with real estate at that time. That was kind of the catalyst. I was actually involved in about 200 to 300 flips from 2008 to about 2016. That market's changed. It's much more difficult now. A lot of people have entered that segment of the market. But I loved being able to take a blank canvas, going in there with a team, fixing a house up, bringing up the value, and then going through the whole process of getting it sold to a nice young family that's going to be able to appreciate it. We've had neighbors, some people look at like the investors and the flippers as bad people, but we've had neighbors where there were houses vacant for a year to 2 years. The weeds are 8 feet tall, windows are broken, and it's just a huge eyesore in this nice community. We go in, we clean it up, we paint it, we make the repairs. Homeless or other people, squatters, would hang out. The younger kids might have little parties in the backyard. So instead, we clean it up, paint it, revitalize it, get it sold to a nice young family that can contribute to the community and become good neighbors. And I've had neighbors come up to me and say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for, buying this house and fixing it up. And every time I drove by it, and then, I'd see shady people hanging out and going in and out, and just, a lot of people would actually thank us. But, there had to be a profit involved as well for the investor. But to me, it was a win-win. But that's when I fell in love with real estate, because I was engulfed in it, and I liked the whole process of the transaction, helping buyers, helping sellers, and just it was real estate was intriguing how different things can affect different markets. Because again, back to economics, since there was a crash, the supply went way up, the demand went way down, and to watch houses that were worth 500,000 all of a sudden be worth 180 in a matter of a couple months. And then to watch the houses go from 180 to a million in a few years, it was very intriguing to me. But the main reason I really love real estate is I like helping families and the relationships I build while I'm doing it.
So I do see that you're in an affiliate of the Homes of Heroes program, which gives
Yes,
savings to the first responders, military, teachers, and healthcare workers. What kind of draws you to that program specifically, though?
that actually was an interesting story. I affiliated with the Homes for Heroes program just about 2.5 years ago. And about the 20-year mark of me being in this industry, people, they say the average person changes careers about 3 to 5 times in their life. And I've been doing real estate for, I've been licensed since 98 in real estate since 03, 04. I was a loan officer prior to that. But I got to a point like, gosh, I love what I do. I love helping families. I love being a part of their story. But I feel like I want a little something more. And I'm like, well, I'll keep doing real estate, but maybe I should start a charity of some sort. I want to do something greater, I guess. Um, and while I was going through this in my mind for few months, I'm like, gosh, what can I do? Just I want to be a little more rewarded because people, they want to grow and keep going to the next level. And for
Mhm.
me, that wasn't necessarily financially. It was more, I don't want to use the word spiritually, but just in a rewarding way. So I came across Homes for Heroes, and it was a program that aligned with what I wanted to do perfectly. So Homes for Heroes was started after 9/11, and it was to kind of help first responders and give back to first responders. So what Homes for Heroes does, they have many affiliates, home inspectors, lenders, realtors, um, escrow companies, title companies, and they give their heroes a benefit of some sort. Um, on the real estate side, if, as an example, if there's 187 occupations that qualify you as a hero. Um, so if I work with a hero and help them purchase a home, they get almost 1% reward. So if they buy $1 million home, it's like 0.007. They'll get a $7,000 check. They can use that for closing costs, repairs, moving expenses, maybe a vacation, because after buying a house, you might need one because it's a long grilling process, or it can be. So they're giving back to those people. And then I was like, bingo, I can do what I love and do something greater.
Mm.
I don't have to start a charity. I can be a part of a charity. Um, so for me, it was just such a great synergy. I've been with them 2.5 years, and most of the rewards that go to the hero actually comes from me. It comes. I donate my commissions to the Homes for Heroes organization, portions of it. They keep some of it for greater charitable, and then my client that I work with gets most of it. For instance, if someone bought $1 million house, I would give $7,000 to Homes for Heroes. They would keep about $395, and my client would get the rest. And all the agents and lenders in this affiliated with them, they're giving to their clients and to the Homes for Heroes organization. And every year, like every quarter, Homes for Heroes will donate to larger charities like the Firefighters Associations, Veterans Associations, children's hospitals, and things like that. And we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars, like probably over $200 million right now. Me personally, um, in my 2.5 years, I've donated
Wow,
$48,856 to all my heroes.
that's amazing.
Um, and it's rewarding, and it comes back to me. So I give, but I get back too. So um, I get referrals and I get to help more heroes. So it's like a circle. Homes for Heroes organization calls it the circle of giving. I give back, they give, and it's just the circle of, if I help a nurse at a hospital and she gets a hero award and she buys a house in Riverside County for 500,000-600,000 and gets a $5,200 or $4,800 check and helps her move or buy furniture. Um, they remember that, and they have other friends they work with at the hospital. So even though I'm giving up a lot and genuinely doing it, I get referrals, and the more people I can help, the better. And you have to be good at what you do too, because you can join the Homes for Heroes program and you can give the money back, but if you're not experienced and you're not doing a quality job as a real estate agent for your client, it might not be the best program. Just getting the money, because you do want to align yourself with a good agent as well. But I've really enjoyed it. During COVID, I have aunts, uncle. My uncle was a firefighter, cousins, a nurse, got friends that are in the military, and police officers. I saw what they went through 9/11, and they truly are heroes and they deserve it. And it's just been a pleasure for me to be a part of the organization and to be able to give back.
That's amazing. Love to hear that. One of your clients mentioned receiving 24,000 in seller credit plus 5,800 back after closing through Homes for Heroes. Can you like break it down for us how you structured all that?
I actually do remember that transaction. It was probably less than a year ago. My client was a military veteran. Um, and that's why I say, Homes for Heroes is one part of it. You mentioned the number. How much did you say they got for Homes for Heroes?
I have 24,000 in seller credit plus 5,800 back.
Yeah, so the 5,800, that's why I mentioned before, the 5,800 was the Homes for Heroes reward.
Mm,
Part of it. Now the 24,000 didn't have to do with the Homes for Heroes. That was the negotiations that, agents do on behalf of their clients. But that one transaction in particular was great because things were a little tight. Most people, when they start looking at homes, they want to extend it because they go, oh, well, this one has a 3-car garage instead of a 2. Or then they start going, well, I want to get a pool now. And then, they're with their lender. Their lender says you can afford this and they want something higher. But I felt really good about this one because these two really deserved it, especially being a veteran. Anyone who risks their life for my freedom, I just, really respect and appreciate that. So the property was on the market for a little while. And they really wanted the house, and I encouraged them, well, let's put in a lower offer. They might take it. And they're, oh, but we really want the house. I'm like, well, they're going to at least respond. Our offer is not going to offend them. So we did, they did counter a little, but then we said, okay, well, how about some credits for closing costs? And so we did get, I think, about 15 to 20,000 in closing costs. Then we got into the home inspection side of things, and there were a couple issues, nothing super, super crazy. But my client's very handy. He could maybe fix them himself and save a lot of money. But we used the home inspection and said, hey, some of these items aren't up to par. We need to fix them, but to keep the escrow moving smoothly, well, if you give us another little additional credit, we'd be happy to just continue forward and close. Now, the Homes for Heroes check comes after the closing. So it came time to close. They had their down payment. That's all they needed to bring in. Their closing costs, everything was the $24,000 covered all the closing costs and some. And then when we closed, Homes for Heroes a week later sent them their $5,800 check, which they bought furniture, did whatever they need, helped with their moving expenses. But I loved that. That's over $31,000. That's the important. I'm not trying to gloat or brag, but being in the industry so long and having experience, if you're with an experienced agent, they can accomplish some great things like that for you. And then when you put the Homes for Heroes reward on top of it, it's just like the icing on the cake. But it was so wonderful to see them not have to bring in very much money to purchase a dream home. And now they're working on trying to have children and raise a family. And I like being a part of that story. So
How does that work on the hero side of things? Do they need to get like qualified, or is a particular program for?
Actually, it's a no catch, no BS program. I'm the one that qualifies them.
Oh,
and we do want to keep integrity in the program. But if they're military or a veteran, they automatically qualify. It's like a 1-page document just verifying their information. I mean, we're supposed to make sure they're not lying, things like that, because we want the integrity. But I knew this client was a veteran, so I didn't have to say, "Hey, can I see your military ID?" I actually got my veterinarian in the Homes for Heroes program because, people love their furry friends. And sometimes they come in, they were hit by a car and they're bleeding, and, a family's pet, their dogs are part of the family. And if a veterinarian can, have to deal with the blood and stitching them up and the trauma. So the organization actually let me include my vet in the program, which was pretty cool. Because again, pets are part of the family too, and they were a hero to the family when they helped save a pet's life. But it's not there's no catch. They don't have to pay a fee. There's no long, grueling application process. They leave it to the affiliates like me to do the vetting. And you can tell, when someone's buying a house, they're doing a loan. Well, they got to show their W-2s to the lender. If you say you're a nurse and, your W-2 says something different. So I don't think there's a lot of people who aren't heroes able to take advantage of the program. But yeah, it's super easy. If military, veteran, firefighter, police officer, EMS, first responder, healthcare industry, and teachers, and they've actually extended it a little bit to some support staff. For instance, the person like the 911 who, when they get the 911 call, the dispatchers. So they have elaborated a little bit. Healthcare is a pretty broad industry because you have doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners. The healthcare is the industry that can actually really use it broadly because there's so many people in the healthcare industry. I was able to put a client of mine He dedicated his life. His niece was handicapped, um, severely handicapped. Can't eat on her own. Can't walk. Can't change. Restroom, the whole 9 yards. And no one in the family wanted to take the responsibility, and he did. He's her caretaker. And I did a little video with them, kind of a touching, moving story, because this guy was so selfless. He gave up his life for his niece. Great guy. And I put him in the program because he is her hero. And a caretaker is kind of the medical industry. And, when I would show up, she was there, he was taking care of her. And that's all it took to get him in the program. He didn't have to go through some extensive screening process, but me on the ground saw that and said, we need to get him in this program.
So for anyone that out there, as long as they are one of what you just mentioned, they can just go to you and apply to you directly.
Yeah. They'll call me and they'll go, hey, my wife's a teacher. Does that? Oh yeah, that qualifies. Or yeah, I was a veteran, but it was like 20 years ago. I'm like, well, were you in the military? Did you serve? Yeah. Okay. Well, you qualify. We have to get their name and some of their information, but it's literally a 1-page form. It's up to us just to do some vetting to make sure. But simple, no catch, no BS program. You close a transaction. Everyone, all the affiliates donate portions of their commissions to Homes for Heroes, and they will get a check. And they can use it for whatever they want. It's a beautiful thing.
How has being a part of that affected your business and the type of client that you attracted?
I do get referrals. So it's helped in that way. Although, I do give up 30% of my commission, which is a lot. I own my own brokerage. So I can do that. Other realtors, they have to do splits. They buy leads, all this extensive marketing, but I'm more of a boutique. So I can do that. Not every agent can do that. They have to give their broker 20%. They're paying 10% for leads or 20% for leads. And if they did another 30, they'd go out of business. So I do get leads from it. It's been, that's one thing. And it's very rewarding. It truly is. Like when I was able to help that caretaker who gave up his life, it was just like, you know what? He's given up so much. It's so nice to be able to show him and give back to him. So it makes it really rewarding. I've always, I don't buy leads. I'm always repeat clients, referrals. That's how I drive my business. And this actually helps it. People love the program. They benefit from it and they tell people about me and what I do. And the circle of giving, I give to them and they give back, and it's just incredible.
Gotcha. You cover a huge geographic area though, from like San Diego County, Orange County, Riverside. How do you maintain kind of deep local knowledge across all that area? And like what kind of the reason behind that?
I've lived in most of the geographical areas that I cover. I spent a lot of time in Orange County, went to high school there. A lot of my friends and family are there. I currently live in San Diego County, lived here 16 years. And prior to that, I lived in Riverside County. I don't know, earlier in the discussion, we talked about how I got into the business, but when the financial collapse, I was doing a lot of flips, 200 to 300 flips. Well, those were all over Riverside, San Diego, and Orange County, and that's pretty big volume. So I had to learn to adapt. Now, some agents specialize in a specific community, and that's their niche, and that is great. For some people, that's what they need. You can have experience in a community, but you also have to have experience in the industry and how to negotiate and how to navigate through the inspections and the escrow and the title and the contract. So my 20 years in the industry, now I may have less time in certain areas, but you can learn that, and areas change too. So you can learn an area and do the due diligence if you have time. Now, that being said, I will not do my clients wrong. So if I'm in an area and it's a certain market type or certain market, property type, and I'm not the best agent for that area and that property type, I would let my client know that and tell them I can find someone who can do that for them, or they're welcome to find it on their own. But sometimes I'm not the best. So even though I do transactions in a broad area, there are segments of those areas that I might not be the best person. But I would let my client know that. If I can't educate myself to do the best job for them, I would let them know that and refer them to someone who can.
Gotcha.
And it's like, I've referred agents from Las Vegas and Arizona have referred clients to me. I wouldn't be a good Las Vegas guy or an Arizona guy. I'm Southern California. And I live in North San Diego County. Agents in San Diego sell properties all over San Diego. But I've lived in Orange County, I've lived in Riverside County, and I'm on the cusp of both. Certain, Murrieta, Temecula are closer to San Diego than, say, Riverside, the city of Riverside. So I may refer that out. For one, it's far, and for two, I may not be the best agent for that specific market. But it's I enjoy different areas because I love learning. And if I have to learn an area, great. Or I just love learning new areas. It's just
your reviews consistently mention few things: attention to detail, honesty, and communication. Are those like personality traits, or was it more like a system you built behind it?
I'm a relational guy. And some agents, there's different ways agents can get their business. Some agents buy leads. Some agents join a team and the broker buys them leads and they call hundreds of people they don't know. And hopefully one of them will work with them. Internet. So there's many different ways to get business. I've always been a relationship person. Build a relationship with someone, do a good job for them, and they'll use me again in the future, or they'll refer their friends and families to me. And that's how I've grown my business. I'm not like that because I think it'll help my business. I think it's just kind of my personality, and maybe that's why I do get the referrals. It's like second nature to me. I'm a karma guy. I always believe, good things happen to good people. Do unto others as you'd have them do on to you. And it's just always worked for me, just being genuine and honest. I try to instill integrity. Everyone's not perfect. I'm sure I have flaws, and I'm sure there's times when I haven't displayed that. But I think in general I do, and I try and treat all my clients like that. But that's how I build my business, just building relationships. And if you're a mean, evil person and you're not nice and genuine, you're not going to have many relationships. And real estate is really a service industry, and you have to do good service for people, or they're not going to use you or use you again or tell people about you. So yeah, I think it was part of my upbringing, and I think it just helped my business grow and flourish. And it gives me the opportunity to not have to buy leads. People call me, "Hey, so and so told me you did a good job," and I just like working with people who already trust me. So in return, um, I'm going to do my best to treat them well and be diligent and honest with them. And I think that goes a long way. I recommend that any new agent out there, build relationships, be genuine, kind, and honest, and know your stuff. And if you don't know something, tell them you don't know, and you'll get the answer, instead of trying to deceive someone or pretend you know something when you don't.
Mm. With all those years going to kind of the space and in real estate as well, what do you think the biggest shift has been ever since you've started, on how people buy and sell houses from that time till nowadays?
So you're saying what do I think shifted from when I first started to now and how people buy and sell houses?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's been a few shifts. One of the reasons we got into the financial collapse is lending was so loose. People were buying houses with no money down. They didn't have jobs. They had bad credit. They were like no income, no asset, no credit score, barely have a pulse, and you can buy a house. And people were just buying houses left and right. And they weren't thinking of the future, the reason they were actually buying a house. And then the values were going up because so many people were buying, the values were going up. And then they were just getting loans and taking out cash and buying boats and buying RVs and buying toys and racking up debt. So it was quite a crazy frenzy. But after the collapse, it was a reality check. Um, I think the average time someone was in a home, and don't quote me on this, but it was like less than 5 years back then. Now, it's much longer, 8, 9, 10. You'll see people in homes a lot longer, because they're buying them now for financial stability, security for their family. People weren't so much tied to the interest rates. They were already high back then. Now, a lot of people who own a home have a 2 and 3/4, 3 and a quarter interest rate. And I think now, people are selling or buying because of a life event. Okay, we got twins. We're growing out of this house. We have to buy a new house. Or a lot of my clients are older and their children just had babies. So now they have grandkids, and they moved to Texas or they moved to Arizona for work. Well, we got to be by the grandkids. So that's like a life event. Because right now, no one wants to get rid of the low interest rate that they're in. So a lot of people are very hesitant to sell. And I think that's why we have low inventory and why prices have risen, even though the rates have risen. Usually when rates rise, prices come down. But no one wants to get rid of that low mortgage rate. So no one's selling. Not everyone, I want to say no one, but less people are selling.
Mm-hmm.
So the inventory is down. So there's clear differences, why people are buying and selling now. Usually a life event. A lot of people are priced out of the market and just straight up can't buy. We're seeing generational purchasing, like a young family. They might buy a house with a downstairs bedroom and bathroom so their parents can live with them and help them afford a house. You're seeing so more multi-generational because that's all who can afford it. We did see during COVID a lot of people moving out of the inner cities and moving to the suburbs because people were allowed to work remotely and you could get a little more if you didn't have to commute. Although now a lot of the companies are saying, hey, you better get back to work. um, so I know I gave you a really broad answer, but in general, people are hesitant right now because values are up, rates are higher than what they used to be.
Is it possibly due to if you take a same person today, with its status, meaning income and etc., you would not get the same interest rate loans now versus back in the days?
The rates have gotten better, but I mean, in the heyday when we were climbing out of that financial collapse, housing market collapse, I mean, people like 3.5, 4 years ago, people were getting in the twos. It went up to the eights, and we don't know why the market still rose.
Can you like break it down for me, like what that actually means in the sense of like paying interest or like over 30 years and things like that, like 2% versus 8%?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of an example. A higher rate lowers someone's buying power. So let me just give you. I have to pull it up here. I'll just tell you the interest. I won't tell you the payment. I'd need a little time to do the display, but for instance, on 500,000, this isn't the payment, but at 3%, you're paying 3,000 a month in just interest. 3,000 a month on 500,000, but it's 7%. So you're paying 35,000 a year in interest at 7% on 500,000. At 3%, you're paying 15,000. So your payment's more than double.
Wow.
So when housing payments, so when housing costs go up and your buying power goes down, it's like a double whammy. That's why it's very confusing to a lot of us why when the rates went from 3 to 8, the house prices still went up. It comes back to economics, supply and demand.
What do you mean by buying power though? Like
so if you make 100,000, you qualify for a certain price at a certain rate.
Okay.
Now, let's just say if you make 100,000 a year, a couple, say that price is 500K at 3%, right? Now, if the rates go to 7%, well, now they can only afford a $350,000 house. They can't afford a $500,000 house.
I see.
Because of the rate. So now what happened? That $500,000 house went to 700,000, but now they can only afford a 350,000 because the rates are high.
So
that's why it's a double whammy.
And then one just goes down.
Yeah, so that's creating more of a disparity in the amount of people who can actually afford and buy a house.
Do you see it differently, like here, especially SoCal? I mean, I'm around the area as well, versus the rest of the states.
Yeah, the Mark, you'll see people saying, "Oh, home values are up," or "Oh, home values are down." It's very localized. Unfortunately, for the younger generation and the younger families that want to try and buy in this market, it's very difficult. It's either generational wealth that helps them do that, or they're able, maybe they get to telecommute, whether they're from the tech industry and a company went public and they got a little windfall. I mean, granted, basically 2 people have to make about 300K, 150K each to afford a regular home in Southern California. But that being said, our market is super resilient. And the reason is supply and demand again. We can't build here anymore. Everything's heading east. So we have a known quantity and we have the best weather, some say, in the world. I saw a thing that deemed the best climate in the world was Tijuana, Mexico. Well,
it's right
San Diego's not too far from there. So it was funny. But so everyone wants to live by the beach. There's nowhere to build. like when we had that collapse in '07 to '09, some areas like Vegas, Florida, Riverside County, Phoenix, Arizona, they had a 50% reduction in home values. We had like a 15 to 20%. And we recovered faster. So that's why markets are local, they're not national.
When you say resilient, like, can you define like what that means?
So resilient means resilient to certain market and economic events. Like, we had a housing crisis in '07, '08, '09 caused by, some would say, horrible lending practices. They were giving everyone loans that shouldn't deserve it. And then finally, the backers of these loans said, oh, this isn't A paper credit anymore. This is B and C. And then everyone pulled out. That was a huge financial disruption. And when I say resilient, some markets lost 50% of their home value. 500,000 went to 200, like in a lick. Riverside County, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Arizona, Florida, certain areas of Florida. So those markets weren't resilient. They got slammed hard. People saw, but in Southern California coastal communities, instead of going down 50%, they might have went down 15 or 20.
Wow, that big of difference.
Instead of feeling the full burden of that economic event. And then some of those communities took years to recover. Like, it just took a long time.
When you say recover back to the original housing value.
Yeah, we recovered. Southern California coastal recovered quicker. So we went down less and recovered faster. So it was more resilient to an economic incident, so to speak. And sometimes there's acts of God, or who knows, people in other parts of the country say California is going to have an earthquake and fall into the ocean. I mean, that would change a lot. I don't think anyone could get over that. But it's a very resilient local market we have here. The problem is it's tough. I mean, people move. They think, whether it's politics or price, or their kids move for work and they want to be by the grandkids, they move somewhere else. Once they move, it's very hard for them to come back into this market. Very difficult. Unless they are very wealthy or have really good incomes.
What would you say kind of the process for both a buyer and a seller's position? We'll start with the buyer. Like, if someone approached to you, hey, Scott, I wanted to find a property here in San Diego, what would be kind of the thinking step or the process that you would take them through to at least get a understanding of their situation? And then how would you approach that kind of thing from, hey, Scott, I wanted to get a house, all the way down to house purchase, they're living in there? So,
like I said, I'm a very relational guy, very detail oriented, like the reviews were saying, and thorough. So for me, the first and most important thing is the relationship. So I'll work on that. I'll try and understand them, their goals, their needs, who they are as a person. And I may not always be right, but I'll try and, I never tell people what to do. I just try and give them the information and let them, decide for themselves. But me building that relationship, that's first and foremost. And then just asking the questions and then educating them on the process. I know a lot of people think, oh, I don't need a realtor and this is easy. Now they're saying that AI closed a transaction recently, and, well, it was for an attorney. And, the house did sell for supposedly hundreds of thousands less than it was worth, but who knows what's true or it's really good to have someone on your side, like a professional real estate agent that's been around. Experience matters. There's a lot that can go wrong. Um, just an example, I helped someone sell a house recently, and she thought her house was worth more than it was. And I went over there and said, well, you told me your house is like 1,800 square feet. And she's like, well, that's what they told me. And I'm like, it feels a lot smaller. So then we measured it and it was like 1,400 square feet.
Oh, that's like a 400 square foot difference.
So the comps, well, if the house was 4,000 square feet and you went to 3,600 square feet, not a big deal. But when you're 1,800 and you go
Right.
to 1,400, that's, 30% or 20, whatever it is. So now you're looking at an entirely different set of comps. And that client was a buyer at one time that didn't have an agent on their side. Things like that can happen. And it was shocking when I said, well, no, your house is actually probably worth $80,000 less than that. And here's
Wow.
why. Here's the 1,800 square foot houses. Here's the 1,400 square foot houses. So when my client bought the house, they bought it at 1,800 square foot prices. But when they go and sell it, they had to sell it at 1,400 square foot prices. Um, that's just one example of many. I could give you hundreds of stories that I've seen, been a part of, and witnessed and heard of as to why it's good to have an agent on your side. So I will get to know them. I'll explain the importance of what I do, and then I'll explain the process, and then try and understand their needs and help them through the process and just be there for them. Let them know I'm here if you have any questions. I'm a realtor. You can call me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I don't answer, it's probably after 11 at night or before 6 in the morning. And I'll call you when I wake up. But if I'm up and my phone rings, I'm here to help you. And just guide them through the process. But it starts with the relationship and the understanding them, educating them on the process, understanding their needs throughout the process, and then doing the best to negotiate, explore, find them what best fits their needs and giving them options. You don't want to just say, oh, here's one, buy this house. Let them choose, give them as many options as possible, and just navigate the transaction to closing. And then hopefully they're happy clients at the end of the day.
What about selling? Is it a little bit different, buying versus selling?
Yeah, selling is different because selling, someone's already gone through the process. They're a little familiar with it. A lot of times, buying or first time home buyers, all sellers think their house is worth more than it really is. They're biased, even though, a highly upgraded one, 4 doors down, sold for this with a pool and a view. They don't realize they don't have a pool and a view, and they haven't done upgrades in like 10 years. So you have to kind of navigate that. But it is a very different, and I always try and put, when I'm explaining things to my client, like I always try and put them in the other person's shoes. Like if I'm working with the seller, I'll say, look, well, if you were a buyer, what would you do? And I'd say the sellers, if you were a seller, what would you do? Like if someone wants to, ask 100,000 below, put in an offer 100K below asking, well, then I ask them, well, if you were a seller, would you entertain that? Or would you stay on the market a little longer? And so I just try and get them to realize, do you really want this house or not? So yeah, there's it is very different. It is very different, but you are negotiating just from a different perspective. One's trying to get the lowest price, the other's trying to get the highest price. So it does change the dynamic. And gosh, what can I say? The biggest difference is A lot of times selling can be emotional too. I've had my client, actually a good friend of mine's mom. I actually kind of grew up in this house. It went full circle. Swam in their pool every day, hung out with the son. She was like a second mom to me, raised kids, grandkids, like 40 years of family. And like, it's sometimes hard for them to let go. Just once it got the offer accepted, just grabbed me and cried on my shoulder for 5-10 minutes because it's such an emotional, like their entire family memories, father, son, grandkids, hard work went into that house, years of upgrades, memories. So buying, they're creating new memories. Selling, they're letting go new memories. So there's different forms of emotions involved in both sides of the transaction. But when it comes to the paperwork, it's pretty similar. One's, doing the inspections, and then the other one's reacting to their, one's giving the disclosures, someone's reading the disclosures, and they're doing the inspections and getting through that. But the emotional perspective is two completely opposite. One's trying to make memories, the other's letting go of memories, and that could be quite interesting.
For inspections, what would be kind of your perspective on red flags that you see in a home inspection?
So the biggest thing, I think most inspectors out there are great, and I haven't really seen too many blatant misses in a home inspection. It happens. The problem is home inspectors get blamed for a lot. Like they get sued a lot. Because if there's something wrong with the house, someone has to blame someone, and it's like, oh, the home inspector should have told me this. Well, home inspectors don't, they can't remove walls to see if there's mold in there. They're not going to take apart a house. They're not going to damage anything. So there's only so much a home inspector can do. So two things, they can be a little vague, like, because they want to protect themselves. So they're a general home inspection. They're not a roofer, they're not an electrician, they're not a plumber. So they can look generally. And they almost always say, I recommend you consult with a licensed roofing company, or I recommend you
Right.
talk to a electrician, or I recommend you seek the advice of a plumbing contractor. So they're broad, they're general, there's a lot of verbiage to protect them. And so that's one problem. I mean, you could probably pay a lot of money and get a super thorough one.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, then there's mold testing and air testing and soil testing, and it could go on and on and on. But I think aside from the home inspection, I think what the most important part is for the agent to review it, be familiar with it, and discuss it with their client. I think too many times people are so involved in the commission check or getting the deal done, and just everything's like rush, 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 rush. Oh, here's the home inspection. Take a look at it. Let me know if you have any issues. But a good agent should actually sit there, read it, call the inspector, say, look, you noted this. Is it a major concern or not? And he might say, well, I've seen it a lot. It happens, but I do have to mention it to protect myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I don't see this too much. You should probably get a second look. And a lot of people just kind of glance. So the inspections are usually pretty decent information, but I think the way that people look at them and how serious they take them. Some agents, here's the inspection. Let me know if you have any concerns. Well, a buyer, inspections can be 120 pages and they just get exhausted halfway through and they don't understand it. So I think to actually pay attention to it and read it and understand it is the most important thing. So I don't think the flaw is in the inspections. I think it's in how people treat them and how serious they take them and how thorough they actually review them.
And I would guess those become talking points or like even negotiation points on like buyer versus sellers and things like that moving forward as well.
Correct.
How
Correct.
would you say kind of to differentiate? Is this a very very minor thing versus like this I need to brought up to a buyer versus or a seller that hey you got to fix this or we need a credit or things like that.
So that comes down to the negotiation part of it, but it really depends. It depends on how bad the seller wants to sell and how bad the buyer wants to buy the house.
Okay.
If the seller feels he's already giving the property away at a good price and doesn't want to do any more concessions, and they had 3 or 4 offers, they can say, take it or leave it. We're going to go to Johnny over here who gave me an offer just as good as yours. Or if the buyer is a little skeptical, the house has been on the market for a year or 3 or 4 months, there's other properties on the market and they could take it or leave it. So it's all subjective, but if they really want the house and it's a $2,000 repair and they want the transaction to go smooth and they don't want to risk losing it, they might just say, you know what, we'll take care of it.
Gotcha.
But if they're tight on funds and there's other things out there, they might be sticklers. They might be hardball on it.
So it really depends on the situation on both sides as well.
Yeah.
Cool. What would you say the most underrated neighborhood in San Diego?
That's a super tough question. I think there's a lot of them. I might be a little biased to North County right now. North San Diego County.
Okay.
I think Escondido has been flourishing a lot. I think Oceanside has been flourishing a lot. When you look at the cities next to Oceanside, if you just go down the coast, you got La Jolla, you got Del Mar, you got Cardiff, you got Encinitas, you got Carlsbad, and then you have Oceanside. Well, Oceanside is still much more affordable than the ones heading south. And Oceanside's kind of eclectic. A lot of those places have a decent amount of land. A lot of them have back alleys. And when you have a back alley, you can put a garage and you can put units on top of the garage. And then you got, an ADU, and then you have some potential for rental income. So I think Oceanside has a lot of potential. I think Escondido, because no one can afford anything further west, is got some room to grow. I think you head down south. I think there's some communities down there that are on the rise as well. But Escondido and Oceanside are kind of got my attention a little bit right now.
Gotcha.
I mean, Oceanside has for a while. I remember, 10 years ago, you could buy a house west of the 5 in Oceanside for like $350,000. And I always will tell my clients, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you go 4 miles that way, it's $1 million. You go this way, it's like, but so it has started to catch up pretty quickly. But the era Oceanside was built and the configuration of some of the neighborhoods is pretty compelling to someone who can do some value add type situations, buy a house, rent the front unit out, build 2-unit ADU in the back that has alley access, and you can get some high rents when you're not too far from the beach. So there's some interesting stuff out there.
Absolutely. What do you think the one thing you wish more home buyers or sellers understand before they start the process so they can avoid possible mistakes or pitfalls and things like that?
Well, I'm a little biased because I'm a real estate broker and agent. I wish they understood the value of their real estate partner and understood actually what we do. There's hundreds of tasks we do, and everyone sees these reality shows of these young kids They sell their grandma's like 18, $24 million home in Hollywood, and they make this $350,000 check. And that's just not reality. I mean, everyone thinks it's easy, and it's not. And there's so many different tasks. Like if we got paid by the hour, it would cost more to hire a realtor than what people are paying. And a good realtor can save you a lot of money. Like my one client who bought at 1,800 square foot prices and sold at 1,400 square foot prices. That was $100,000 swing. It probably would have cost less than 20K to, and the seller would have probably paid it. So I think realtors are invaluable, good ones. They can bring a lot to the table. They can save you a lot of money. They can save you a lot of hardship and heartache down the road. And just make the process simple. I mean, moving, divorce, and job change are the top 3 stresses in life. So moving and buying a house, if you can have someone on your team help you navigate one of the top 3 stresses in your life, I think it's worth it. But a lot of people treat their agents like, oh, I can do this, and until they get into it, they don't realize like what it involves. I mean, meetings and lock boxes and driving and gas and paper and ink and toner and HO and E&O dues and realtor dues and lockbox dues and marketing dues, and then inspections and appraisals and calls and emails and late nights. And I'm on the computer. When my wife goes to bed, I get a lot of work done after because I need that family time too. But I don't get my work done. So when she goes to bed, I'm up for 2-3 hours online looking for properties and taking notes and checking email. It's just it's hard to explain unless you're in it. But and it's another industry. It's an 80-20 industry. 20% of the agents are making 80% of the income. So it's a grind out there for a lot of people. So I wish a lot of people understood exactly what we do for them. And it's not until after the transaction they really understand. But I always wish they understood that before the transaction.
Gotcha. Then on that side, what would be your best advice for the people that just starts out? They just got their license today, let's say. What would be one of your best advice?
I guess 3 parts. Relationship building will go a long way. Explore and study your market and know your market. And when you first start out, a mentor, don't be afraid to use a mentor to teach you and get you to where you need to be.
Gotcha. Great stuff. Last but not least, where can people find you, Scott?
ScottOlsonRealty.com. That's the same as my Facebook. www.scottolsonrealty.com, or they can call me at 949-212-6749.
Cool. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Yuan.
All right.